Okay, so here's the game plan. First off, I have an Amazon EventBridge trigger. This is essentially the Amazon CloudWatch function, but evolved. This will be the cron enabler, which will execute 3 Lambda functions in sequential order on the first day of each of the following months. The first Lambda will turn on the EC2 instance, and once the EC2 instance is on, the second Lambda will then run a shell command to execute a Python executable to update my descriptions with the like and dislike counter. This triggers API calls for the YouTube API, which luckily the number of requests is less than 10,000 requests a day, which is totally fine by my particular use case. And the result of the Lambda will make me a happy camper since all my video descriptions have been updated with the latest like and dislike counts. And finally, the third Lambda will turn off the instance. And so how much would this cost for this particular setup? And according to my calculations, it's about pennies per month. Before you begin, make sure you get an OAuth credential ID via Google Console Developers. I made sure that this was a web app related credential ID, and this is primarily used to refresh tokens to avoid manually verifying your application with Google's API. Make sure you download the JSON file and name it something familiar. I named mine client secret web app.json, and I placed a file in the same directory as my executable. And I went ahead and I obtained the client secret web app JSON file, and I am repointing my specific observation or my specific variable to client secret web app JSON over here. And the primary reason why I'm using this is that within the refreshing of the authentication process, where I don't have to manually click through all these processes, that this specific function uses the web application. And a lot of inspiration came from Corey Schaefer. His YouTube video is attached on over there. So essentially at a very high level overview, if your pickle file does not exist, it will essentially just put all of your scopes in here and just re-verify you. And then it just loads that on in. And if your pickle does already exist, it'll just go ahead and reload all of your credentials, and then you can just go on your merry way. And so let's do a real basic demo over here. All you do is just do Python execute your script here. And just for, since this is just like for testing purposes, let's comment out all these so we can save the number of requests that we are working with. And we just want to access the API. So we would just do Python, here we go, statistic. We run that, and then on my other screen, it popped up a specific verification process over here, which is very, very familiar. And just continue through, continue. It has all 3 services, and voila, the authentication flow has been completed. I can close that window. So notice here, credentials have been saved, and notice here a token.pickle file appeared. So if we run this again, it just loads the credentials on in, and we don't have to go through that verification process. And this is really, really wonderful when we are putting this onto the cloud, and we will see that how that can actually affect our workflow. For a great storage device and a great testing device for this particular use case, I went ahead and created an S3 bucket called YouTube description, where I would store my recorded data as well as any potential logs that I would want to have in this particular process to reference to. While I was at it, I went ahead and created an IAM role to grant permission to access my EC2 instances in S3 buckets. I called this YouTube EC2 description, and I'll attach this role on my new instance. The primary reason behind this is to ensure some level of security and permission of scope within my AWS account. Alright, so now that we have our IAM roles already set up and we have a associated S3 bucket to reference to, let's go ahead and create our instance. I'm just going to select the Amazon Linux profile here, and let's use a little bit larger box. Let's use 2 CPUs with 4 gigs just in case, even though I don't think we will need that much. We need to attach our IAM role that we just created. It's going to be YouTube EC2 description. Let's go ahead and go to the next part. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. This is fine, but like in general, when you're doing production, you should probably have like a very specific IP that you're associated with, so that it could like just more so like in a security issue. But I'm just going to leave this as is. Let's go ahead and review and launch. Go ahead and use the YouTube update description RSA. That's already fine. I already have my PEM file, which I already conveniently have within my given folder structure. So it'll look something like this, where you download your own PEM key, which is located here, YouTube update description. So I already have that associated within my file structure here. Okay, now it only took like a few seconds, but this is our instance that we'll be working with. Let's go ahead and connect. All you need to do is just copy this and make sure that your pen key is actually located in your given file structure over there. So all I do is just just paste that on over. Oops, let's copy this and let's paste that here. And now we are here, just type in yes, it just registers you as the author. And voila, we are inside our given box. So what we want to do now is to ensure that our Python is up to speed, -- version. With all yes, sudo yum update. Okay, all the files are up to date. So let's go ahead and install a very nifty package, which is getting Git, so that we can download our own repository from GitHub instead of SCP-ing all of our code on it. So let's do that. So we have our Git, and then once that is finished, it should only take a few seconds. Let's do a Git version. That is fine. Okay, sweet. Let's go to our GitHub repository and let us copy our code and then git clone that specific repository. And voila, we have our YouTube repository here. So there are two files that we need to upload. One of them is going to be our environment file, and the second one's going to be our pickle file. So I'm just going to go ahead and, that's not it. I'm going to go ahead and copy this command. Go ahead and copy that command. Instead of SSH-ing, we just need to SCP our files using that pen key. And we need to get our token.pickle file. And we just put this in the same directory there. And then we also need to secure a copy of our environment file, .env, over here. And if we do an ls here, we have our ls-a, I should say. We have our environment file and we have our token pickle. So let's go ahead and move those files on through so we can actually access our given files within our scripts. Okay, now let's go ahead and move to the YouTube automation. Go ahead and do that, and voila, we have our script. Let's go ahead and expand this and clear, do another ls. Okay, so we have our pickle file and we have our environment file over here. So now that everything is good to go, one last thing we need to do is to do a sudo pip3 install -r requirements. And this will just install all of our associated packages with this given framework. And voila, we have all of our given files. So let's do a pip3. And just doing a quick pip3 file, this is where all of our files are actually downloaded, and we are ready to go ahead and test our setup. One thing we want to do is to create a directory where we can actually put our data files into when we're actually running our script for the YouTube comment update all. So let's go ahead and test out small snippets of our scripts over here. So just for the test purposes here, let's go ahead and now use our uncommented code boto3. This is going to be basically just transporting our files to an S3 bucket, and this, when we just run through, this can have a pretty much like a log on what our descriptions will be looking like, and we have somewhat of a history to reference to if anything were to go awry with our given description. So let's go ahead and comment out the update descriptions since we don't want to use all of our YouTube API requests. And so let's go ahead and comment that out. Let's do that, and everything else should be all squared away and ready to go. Let's go ahead and run this Python 3 YouTube comments all and get that data in there. Statistics over here. Python, I spelled Python 3 incorrectly. Let's type that in correctly. And loading files, it has all of my associated files over here. Loading them in has a specific data frame that it outputs. Check out that data over here. It has video statistics. Take a look at that. That looks pretty good. All right, so this successfully ran. Now let's go ahead and check out our S3 bucket. Now our files should actually be uploaded there, and I'll point that out in just a minute. Yep, right here, video statistics. It just was uploaded. And let's go back to our command prompt over here, and let's check out the, let's go back to the file, YouTube statistics, go back to file all the way there. So we are referencing our video statistics. This is our our S3 bucket name, and this is the file that we're going to be renaming it. So that looks pretty good. The next part we would want to do is that since all of our work is now, all squared away and dandy, we will then want to automate this process, and that is where the Lambda functions come into play. And just for all intents and purposes, go back to our S3 bucket. We don't need this file. This is going to be like our little test dummy to see if everything has been correctly executed properly. So let's go ahead and delete this, and we could just reference this specific bucket to ensure that our processes have successfully ran throughout the entire script. I went ahead and created a new IAM role to grant access to full EC2 access and systems management. Make sure to associate this with the Lambda service, since I will be attaching this role to a few Lambda functions that require access to EC2 instances for start and stop EC2 commands. In addition, I'm also granting this user the permission to run commands remotely via the services management. This will come in handy when it comes time to execute scripts remotely. All right, now let's go ahead and get associated with our Lambda functions over here. So what we want to go is to go to Lambda. Now that we are going to be creating our Lambda functions, since our EC2 instance is already running over here, let's create a function to actually stop that. So let's do EC2, or just do stop EC2 instance. And be really simple, let's do a capital S over here. That is fine. And use an existing role, we need to create our EC2 Lambda access, which we have done earlier. Just reference that role over here, and that should be all good to go. Now there's going to be 2 tests that we need to actually configure over here, and notice that these are going to be our event dictionaries over here, and we could just reference this here. So we have instance region first. Let's go ahead and configure that. Our default region is going to be, let's say, US East -1, and then the event that we are referencing is instance ID, and we can go ahead and put that right here. Cool. And we can go back to our EC2 instance, copy our running instance over here, and paste that on over. And then that looks good. Hello world. Yeah, it's fine, whatever. Okay, this is going to be stop instance test. Let's go ahead and create that. And now let's go ahead and deploy this. And let's go to, so that successfully ran. Let's go ahead and test that. Test this, and this should successfully go through where it just stops our instance. Successfully stop that, and let's go ahead and refresh this. Voila, now it's stopping. Sweet. So now that we know that works, let's go ahead and create another function, and in this case it's going to be start EC2 instance. Same format. The only thing that we need to change is to use the existing role, EC2 Lambda, create that function, and very similar code. I'm just gonna copy and paste that on over here, and notice that the GitHub is this. You can go ahead and reference that, but yeah, pretty much just got that, got those specific pieces. Same idea. We have an instance region, do the same thing. Let's do, yeah, it's like US East 1, and then we have our instance ID. Configure this, instance ID, and delete that. Let's go back here, copy this, key ID, event start instance test, and let's create that. Boom, that is now created. Let's deploy this. Let's now wait for that to go through. Let's go ahead and test that. And this should successfully go through, and now successfully started that instance over here. Let's refresh this, and now it's pending over here. Sweet. So we can let that load in. So once we have our start instance and our stop instance, now we just need something in between, and now that's going to be running a specific command remotely, and that's going to be via SSM. Okay, great. So now that we have 2 Lambda functions which starts and stops our EC2 instance, we need 1 more Lambda function in order to execute our statistics py file. So let's go ahead and just do a real quick demonstration as to how this is going to work. So I'll be using the systems manager, which essentially can execute your scripts from your given instance remotely, which is really useful. So since we don't have to SSH in, so you just go in and click onto that run command over here, and then we want to run a shell script. You let that load for a little bit and run shell script over here. And then so there's going to be a few functions or commands that we are going to be needing initially for this. It'll be a little bit different when it comes to actually running this and wrapping this into a Lambda function. But first and foremost, we would want to first set our working directory. And conveniently, I already have the working directory over here. Just copy and paste that on over. But once we are inside of our working directory, we just want to run Python 3, and we want to execute our statistics data py file over here. So once we have that all dandy squared away, let's double check our bucket, see, make sure there's nothing in there. Okay, so we have that all squared away. We need to choose our instance. It's not here. We need to ensure that our instance is actually running. Okay, let's just start the instance real quick. I might have turned it off earlier when I was testing out my code, but let's go ahead and run that. It's now starting. And then we need to choose our instance manually. This is going to be our node, which is conveniently referenced right here. So just click on that, and I think that's all we really need. So let's go ahead and just run this. And okay, so it does not fail immediately, so it might take a little bit of time, maybe like 5 seconds or so. But okay, good, it ran. Let's look at the output over here. Hopefully it's the output that we saw earlier, and voila, that looks right. Okay, yeah, we have our data frame over here, and let's do our last check, and voila, our video statistics have been uploaded on that month, day, year, and hours, minutes, seconds. Sweet. So let's go ahead and delete that because we will be doing an additional test once we wrap our stuff inside of a Lambda function. So let's delete that and close that. So once we have our systems manager all squared away, let's go and create a Lambda function that does exactly just this. So let's create a function. Let's call this update YouTube description, and then instead of Node.js, we'll be using Python 3.9 and use an existing role. This will just be the one that we created, EC2 Lambda. Let's create that function. Okay, and once that, okay, sweet, yeah, once that has been up and loaded, conveniently I already written some code that does what we need to do. This just refers to the region events, and this is our executable that we want to run, and then this is our working directory within our EC2 instance, and that looks all good to go. So we need to configure our test. Let's go ahead and name this test execute YouTube instance, and then let's go ahead and copy and paste our our region identifiers. Do that. This is region, ours is US East 1, and then let's do instance ID just over here, and this is our ID that we can just copy and paste from our EC2 management ID right there, and voila. Let's get rid of that space. Execute YouTube script EC2. Let's create that and deploy that, and that looks good to go. Now let's go ahead and test. Hopefully this is a green. No. Okay, that was good. Okay, nothing was returned, which is fine because we're not returning anything. Okay, that looks like it was fine. Yeah, looks like stuff has went through. So let's go ahead and look at our YouTube bucket, refresh, and voila, our video statistics are here. So that's like really great news. Now let's go ahead and delete that. Before we even begin with the CloudWatch aspect, let's now start integrating our updating of our merging of our description. So let's go ahead and connect to our instance over here. Let's copy and paste that on over to my Git terminal and yes. And remember how we comment out some of our code? Well, we're going to be uncommenting that out right there and see if everything goes to plan once we put this on a cron job instance. So from an initial dry run through, we would want to make sure that all of our descriptions are being merged, and we have a check going on. Let's clear that. Okay, so let's run that. So it'll be Python 3 YouTube comment statistics, And now we should get a instance that pops up to determine whether or not we want to go through with our changes. So start update process. Yes, and then voila, this is going to be our thing that we would want to double check and make sure that our change is enacted. So let's say no for now, partly because we want to remove that check. So since when the cron is going through, we don't have to manually go in. So we would have to comment out that check, because I am confident that when we are updating our comment descriptions or descriptions in general, we don't necessarily have to go in here and then, look at what's being changed, because I already know what's being changed. So we can go over here and comment out if we are 100% comfortable with this particular instance, which we 100% are. Okay, and I know for a fact that just due to trial and error that this will be executing just fine, and we can go ahead, actually we can just go ahead and run this. We will go ahead and do Python 3 YouTube comment update statistics, and then this should update all of our descriptions inside of our YouTube account. So let's go ahead and actually pull up my YouTube account, and this is my YouTube studio of where we can see the likes, dislikes associated here. Let's look at our first one, 13 likes, 0 dislikes, so it hasn't been updated in a while. In fact, maybe like a few days, no more than a week, roughly a week, and it can just keep on going through. So once we start with the updating process, everything is being updated over here, and let's let that run. So let's go ahead and refresh this, and 14. There you go. So we know for a fact that our descriptions have been updated with the number of likes and dislikes, and it did that for each one of our videos. So notice how I did that manually. Let's go ahead and automate this process with the use of a cron job, and notice how there's like no errors. And let's actually go ahead and check out the EC2 instance real quick over our S3 bucket and YouTube description. Let's go ahead and refresh that, and then this is our video statistics. So everything looks pretty good. Okay, so now that we know everything works and everything is according to plan, we just need to sequentially put the Lambda functions to execute one after the other. And the way to do this is something called Amazon EventBridge. It's just basically Amazon CloudWatch, but Amazon has went ahead and upgraded their interface, and they just did a rebranding. That's pretty much all it is. So let's go to rules, and let's create a rule over here. So this first rule we want to do is like start EC2 instance over here, and then this just this starts EC2 instance for in this particular case it is for our YouTube description updates, and we want to schedule this using the cron expression over here, and we can just click on this link and look at how the cron fields are operated. AWS uses a different, I guess, like scheme or like format, but it's very intuitive. So in this case, I just want to update my description like once every month, because honestly, I'm worried about the SEO applications, but this will do. So let's make sure just one space in between each one of these. And so this would be starting at 8 o'clock on GMT. Let's put that, yeah, leave it as GMT, whatever. Because within the actual script, it will actually just be updating that specific time to that of Eastern or PST, depending on what you guys want, but I left it as EST. And we have a Lambda function. We want to select our Lambda function. We just want to start it, and I think everything else is, oh, we want to do this. We want to ensure that our Lambda function has the correct corresponding input. So very similar, just go to our specific test case and just copy this on over, because this that is the specific input that it is looking for. So we have the instance region, we got instance ID, and I believe that is related to the start. Yeah, start EC2 instance. So that is all dandy, and that looks pretty good. So we'll go ahead and create that, successfully started. So let's do something similar. In this case, let's stop EC2 instance. Stops the EC2 instance related to YouTube updating description. Okay, very similar. Let's schedule this, do a cron expression. Let's go over here, copy that again. Instead of this, we just want to do it like, let's keep it up for 3 minutes on each given month, first day of each given month, and Let's do that, and that looks pretty good. So something similar, we just want to stop our EC2 instance, and we want to configure that output. So let's go to the other function, stop EC2. It's the same format. We want to get our specific input. Oops, maybe it's right here. Yeah, let's get that on over, paste that over there. Let's get rid of some white space, and that looks good to go. Let's create that. And one last rule we want to create, this would be execute or just update YouTube description. And it's kind of self-explanatory, but update YouTube description over here. Let's schedule this. And so one of the downsides about the cron expressions is that in this case, AWS only operates on a minute-by-minute basis, and they don't do it by seconds. So we're just going to be starting at 8:01, and that should be plenty of time for the instance to actually execute its given command. So it gives it like 2 minutes. I'll probably decrease it to 1 in the future, but that should be all squared away and dandy. So let's update that, configure the input. Now this input's a little bit different, partly because the keys are named differently. So let's go ahead and go here. Let's go to configure test event, just copy and paste that on over. Where is it? Here it is. Paste that on over here, and voila, everything looks good to go. And that is my demonstration on how to upload everything to prod and make sure that everything's running on an instance so that you don't have to interact with updating your descriptions with the number of likes and dislikes.